Good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince. We have Ian, and our special guest today is Manoj Khettry. Manoj, just say hello to make sure that we got you.
How's everyone?
Perfect. Coach Barker?
Good, thank you. Good to hear you.
Little audio check. So Manoj, thank you so much. So before I have Manoj kind of sharing the topic or whatever, Manoj and I go way back. We were teammates together, club soccer back in the 80s. And we've just, kind of kept the friendship throughout. And but he's been he's a youth coach. He's been a youth club director. He's worked with Corver. He's been a college coach at different levels. So I'm just going to have Manoj just kind of share his journey at first, and then we're going to get into his presentation. We're going to talk about why technique matters. So thank all of you for being on. And Manoj, I'll just start with you, and let's share your journey a little bit.
Yeah, no, thanks to both of you. I guess my journey started, in 1989, 90 in terms of coaching. I was actually living in Mexico, and I had gotten admission into a private university there to work on a comparative literature degree. I didn't have enough money saved up, so I came back to the U.S. To work some camps in the summer. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, I realized, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to coach. So I started coaching for Dynamo, which is the club Vince and I both grew up playing for as kids. Went on to graduate school at Miami, Ohio. Was fortunate enough to become the director of coaching for the Cincinnati Classics, and then got into college soccer through on the men's side with Cal Berkeley, and then on the women's side at the University of Missouri, and then went to be an assistant at Dayton, a head coach at St. Bonaventure, head women's coach at Stetson, and now I am in the role of the director of Cup Boys for Cincinnati United Premier.
Good, thank you. Yeah, and I meant to say that at the beginning. So thank you again for coming on and sharing your journey. So when we were talking about the topic today, we were like, well, let's talk about things that we really haven't discussed yet. And this is like, I think, webinar number 82 or 83 for us. And one thing we haven't really discussed is, why technique matters, and we were on air before we went live, and we were talking about, well, this is a really good time for kids to get one with the ball, if you will. So, but you've got a presentation, so I thought we would just go ahead and share that.
Sure.
And we use that to kind of drive the conversation. So you should be able to go ahead and go from there, and then Ian and I will chime in and go from there. Thanks.
So this is just something that I believe, and I'd love to hear, obviously, your thoughts or people, who are watching. But at least in my experience, at all levels, at every stage of my coaching, I feel like technique has formed the core of what I believe is paramount in producing confident, competent players who can master the ball. So if you want to possess the ball, obviously, or whatever style you want to play, it's always going to be broken down by technique. And the thing that I learned by having coaching at various levels is you just have to adapt the technical training to the level of their player, their competitiveness. You can do technical things with college players, and it's disguised in a fun activity or a game that's competitive where the space is reduced. I always looked at rondos as we're working really on technical passing, right? Yeah, decision making and possession, but you can change the conditions so that they're forced to work on different aspects of their technique. If it's two touch, you got to use both feet. One touch, whether it's three touch in a space, so now they have to change their first touch and find a solution. But to me, that I feel like technique has always formed the core of what I believe.
No, I agree. And there's that old saying, right? Without technique, there's no tactics or decision making. And and in the coaching schools today, they say that technique's really not being taught, but it is. It's just being done a little bit differently. But so we talk about the importance of technique. And you've been a youth coach, you've been a college coach, you've seen college players. Yet and I talk to some college coaches, and they're like, my goodness, they still can't do simple things,
Right.
So if you want, we can just continue on with your next slides, because I think it goes right into that what we were just talking about.
And this is actually more specific to the women's game. I was a coach at the mid-major level. Whether I was out recruiting or, had players, these were certain things that I saw that were deficiencies in the players, and that we had to teach them, and we had to create a framework where they could get better at these things. One was just the ability to strike the ball. And I'm talking about like actually being able to hit a ball either with your laces, to drive a ball over distance, and certainly very, very few players who were 2-footed. I mean, how often do you see games where, you'll see an attacker in a position where he or she can shoot, and it's their weak foot, and they don't want to use their weak foot, and they try to cut it back to move it onto their dominant foot, and they don't get the shot off, they get tackled. It just doesn't come off. And then the other two big things were individual defending. It's not sexy to teach defending, right? So and defending, what people don't realize is, and maybe I believe this because I'm a defender, and you and I were good defenders, right? When we were young, we took pride in our individual duels. Somewhere along the way, someone taught us how to defend. And then the other is heading, right? So I see it as a weakness in not just the women's game, but also in the men's game.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's funny you say striking the ball. And I went to Scotland one time, and I was at Aberdeen. Never been so cold in my life. And there was these U10s, and they were just pinging balls. And I'm like, my goodness, those kids can strike a ball. And, that's one thing that I'll never forget from that trip. And then when I came back, to work in the club I was with, I'm like, okay, we just got to work on striking balls, and if these 10-year-olds can do it, we can do it too. So we have a question. So I'm going to bring up, so by the way, usually when I pop my big bald head on there, that means that there's a question. So Andrew says, or asks, what advice would you give to the coach who didn't make it far in their playing career and didn't receive high-level coaching growing up in terms of coaching technique? So any advice there?
I think that's a great question. I think if you have someone on a team that you coach that can demonstrate the technique to the level that you want it, use them as an example. I think we talk about this all the time, is that coaches are responsible for setting environments, right? And environment is what makes players better. So you may not be able to demonstrate the activity, but you might have someone on your team who can demonstrate it. I think I did my B license with a gentleman who, and I can't remember his name. He was a hockey player. He never played soccer. And he was an excellent, excellent coach. And I asked him once, I go, so how do you show your demos? And he said, well, our club is so big. He said, I can ask, one of the boys or one of the girls to come and demonstrate. They come to my practice and I have them demo, and then we do activities. And I was like, oh, it's creative. That's a good way of doing it. Nowadays, I mean, I've heard people bring iPads to training and can show a video of what the technique looks like. They can even show a lot of times what the activity itself looks like. So in this day and age, we have so many opportunities, just because you can't demo something, that should be a hindrance to be able to coach players.
And, visuals are a really good alternative. So no, it's a great question, Andrew. Very good. So we can go on.
So this is a question that you and I talked about, right? Is that especially in youth soccer, why do we tend to pick kids who are athletic versus kids who are technical and skillful at young ages?
Mm-hmm.
I've had this conversation with numerous coaches, right? Our tendency is, we want to be successful. We feel like a kid who's athletic, we can teach them the skills, right? That we can improve their technique. I've often thought, like, I'll give you an example. In our under 11 age group, we'll have 4 teams of 13. So, we have 52 kids. And if a kid is in the top third of technique in that age group, we should put them on one of our top teams. And the reason being is that if their technique is that good, being around more athletic kids will improve their technique. It will sharpen it. The other piece that they have to have is they have to have a team that actually, prioritizes playing a certain way, passing the ball, building out of the back, where technique is actually rewarded, right? And I feel like we don't do that enough with our youngest, most technical players. If we did that more, we might be developing kids who can play at higher levels and whose technique is so sophisticated and refined that they can be special players. Because if I ask either you or Ian, like, think about all the greatest players that we love from the past or the present. Not one of them is not technical. Like, all of them have superior technique, right?
Yeah.
That's part of what separates them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they can put a ball anywhere, and for those that are watching, so this the picture, my son hates this picture, but so the one where he's in the green Umbro jersey was when he was 10 or 9, and you can kind of see he was still growing into his body a little bit, and he was slow, but he was really good with the ball. And then the one on the bottom right is when he was a senior in college, and he grew like crazy, and he has a ton of hair, and I can't explain that one either, but it's just, for the most part, you just don't know, and if we can get kids, to your point, we miss a lot of kids, and we put those kids on B and C teams because they're little, and when back in the day in ODP, I thought one of the best things we ever did for the younger age groups was do the 6-month thing for ODP. We didn't do it for and I always said, just give me the Smurfs. Give me the little guys. I'll work with them because I know they're going to grow.
Right.
They're going to grow. But I always thought it was good. But then I thought, you know what? Maybe, and I always had reservations. I had reservations at first because I thought, for the first time, are we saying size matters, right, in our sport? And yeah, you can argue either way. But and I'm a little guy. You're a little guy, right? So we always had to fight our way through. But anyway, so let's move on, and I just want to let people know that just because they're not when they're little, still don't overlook them.
Right. No, agreed. So I think for me, I've taken teams to Europe. I've taken 2 college women's teams, and I've been to Europe with a group of kids that we picked through Adidas, and we played in a mini 4v4 tournament in France in 1998. And, I remember playing the team from Spain in the 4v4, and our kids were so much more athletic than them. And they beat us. I want to say it was like, and it was because they were just so much more technical. I remember one of the goals that they scored, it was like 4 consecutive one-touch passes. None of them were clean.
Right.
They weren't perfect, but they accomplished and got to where they needed to be, and they obviously knew how to play. But overall, they were just more technical than we were.
Yeah.
And I remember, the women's teams that I've taken to Europe, almost always, like, there wasn't one time when we played a team and I thought, wow, that team was like as good or better than us, like athletically, but almost always they were very, very good technically. They had a sophisticated understanding of how they wanted to play collectively. And because of that, they were either always in the game or they would beat us.
Right. Right.
So, you know, one of the problems that we have, and we've talked about this when we were teaching together this past summer, is that our country is just so big.
Yeah.
You know, you've got different weather, you've got different circumstances, populations, all sorts of things. So I think, you know, if we can try to build like micros, and for us, it's our club, right? Our club is committed to playing a certain style. We're going to build out of the back. Our boys are going to pass the ball. We value technique. We value the ball. But sometimes we find ourselves, you know, kind of isolated. Like I hadn't coached under 11s in like 20 years. And the last time I coached under 11s, they were playing 11v11 on a big field, right? So I turned to my boss as we were like early on in the season. I go, this is like my first 9v9 game. And he just kind of looked at me and I said, yeah, it's my first 9v9 game. And what I discovered is we were the minority, right? We were trying to play and teams were punting, taking long goal kicks. So now, you know, one of the things I had to do was adapt my training, and it was dealing with the ball in the air. I had to teach the kids how to bring balls down out of the air, how to volley them to teammates, how to bring them down off their chest, how to fight for 50-50 balls, because I kept telling them, listen, you know, teams are going to kick the ball at us, so we've got to earn the right to play. So I had to adapt some of the techniques that I was working on with the kids to deal with the game, just so they could be successful and play the way we want to play.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to pop my head on. So there is a question. Fred has asked, do you encourage players to go to professional level or higher level games to help them emulate those players they can watch in person? Or do you feel that the live experience is better than observing via video or watching televised matches?
So if I understand the question, is it more valuable to go to live games versus watching them on?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I think for me, growing up as a kid, going to live games was so important in my development. Like we were at a time when I think, you know, we had two ways of watching games. One was Soccer Made in Germany from PBS with Toby Charles. And the other was when I lived in New Jersey, we had Star Soccer, which would show you an English match. And it was a first division game. But I lived in New Jersey and I lived an hour away from Giant Stadium. So I went to numerous Cosmos games when I was a kid. I think going to games yourself is invaluable. You know, we tend to, I think, give kids homework sometimes when they go to games, but just the sheer, like being there, seeing the level, I think gives you such a wonderful understanding of, you know, I'm going to watch a guy who plays my position, or, you know, somebody does something clever or crafty and you haven't seen it before. And now what's your instinct? It's to go home and try it and see if you can do it. Right. I think both are valuable. I wouldn't say one is more. I think going to games live is just a little bit more valuable because you can see so much more. But if you don't have that ability, I mean, obviously watching as much soccer on TV is something that you can do.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I got excited. I thought like last week when the Bundesliga was on, even though there were no fans, I was like, wow, this is really cool because you could really like hone in on things, in my opinion. You know, when I was watching, I thought that was pretty cool. So
the thing that struck me right away is that I could actually hear the players. Like I don't speak German. I could hear the players. Like usually when you watch a professional game, because of the crowd, because of the commentators, you can't hear the players.
Right.
And you could hear the players. And also you're in in an arena and there's no one there. So, you know, everyone's voice is echoing off these empty seats. I thought that was really interesting.
I did too. Well, let's go and move on. If you want. Oh, yep.
So, you know, something that I think we talk about all the time, but is the pressure to win a factor in not developing technique and confidence in young players? For instance, you know, building out of the back at younger ages. I think we all recognize that it takes a long time to make a player. It takes a long time to develop technique. And when you say, hey, we're going to build out of the back, especially at younger ages, the kids are going to make mistakes, right? You're going to concede goals. I think, as we're committed to playing out of the back, but one of the things we're starting to teach our kids now is, okay, there's times that we can't play out of the back, right? So they've pressed us up. Can we hit a longer ball to the second level player and play over that first level? Still passing the ball, it's still building out of the back.
Right.
It's just teaching the players that we're not going to kill ourselves by playing out of the back when we shouldn't. And there's times to play out of the back and there's times that are not. But we just encourage them to make those decisions and make those choices. We'll help them when they make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the mistakes they make at 10 and 11, they're not going to make at 16, 17, and 18 when it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, especially when they're young, I mean, getting it wrong is part of getting it right, isn't it? It's just part of it. So, so I think that's the last one, but thank you so much. And if it's okay, if people ask, can we share that deck?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing we talked about at the very beginning was our hope that during this time when kids are isolated, they're at home, they can't train with their teammates, that they're doing things obviously with the ball on their own, right? And so a couple really positive things could come out of it. Number one, you and I, when we were growing up, we developed a relationship with the ball, right? So I wanted to be out in my backyard doing something with the ball. That's how I learned how to strike a ball. That's how I learned how to juggle. I improved my technique. So at our club, we created what's known as the at-home training program, and I'll share just a snippet with you if I can.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yep. Should be able to share your screen.
Okay, if I hit entire screen, share. Yeah.
There you go. Yep, it's coming. There you go.
So you can see, this is for our under 11 group, and it's 3 days of training. We've added things like an inspirational player video,
Cool.
and you can see the kids can just click on whatever, and it gives them the activity. So we've created 3 days, and it's every exercise is either one player, one ball. If it requires another person, we encourage them to, use a rebound surface, a wall, something. But the categories, after it's one player, one ball, passing, receiving, ball striking. We always have goalkeeping, juggling, and then there's some coach choice stuff. And we've been putting different things like Kobe mindset of a warrior, or the coach's choice will be an individual defending activity that, when I first looked at it, I was like, how do you work on individual defending by yourself? And it's actually a very good video. It just works on work, stepping into lanes, intercepting. But we've been doing this with our kids. We're on the 8th week. We're going into our 9th week. And, it's been really good. We've got nothing but positive feedback from the players. What we hope comes out of it is that our players have developed a relationship with the ball. And actually, I'm curious to see, if in some situations, their technique is a little bit more refined.
Yep. Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Well, thank you. You've been very gracious with your time. We've gone over 15 minutes. Coach Barker, any questions or observations?
Thanks, Manoj. It's kind of refreshing to have this conversation. I was typing into the chat box. I think coaching education for United Soccer coaches, for US Soccer, and I think FAs around the world, we've gone too far away from technique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of us are starting to see it's time to shift back. But what would be better is if quicker than us changing, the kids start to pick it up. So maybe one of the silver linings from a soccer perspective of COVID is more at-home training. And I'm hoping some of them are getting into it. And some of the resources you're providing, Red Bull is another one we've been touting, their Train at Home program. Mm-hmm. These are fantastic resources. And, coaches, mums, dads, guardians, get the kids with this stuff, because this is what we should be doing when we come back to training in the training environment, not just something they do at home.
Yeah, and just on that, so Manoj, you said you watched the training session Barcelona did yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
well, it was a while ago.
Yeah. And they had them in different quadrants, right? And it's all just technical stuff, right?
Yeah, it has to be, right? So I guess, Spain is not quite as far along as Germany is in terms of their return to play.
Right.
So they had basically, imagine, going from end line to end line and the midfield. So 3 on one side, 3 on another. Players are social distancing. There's one coach wearing a mask, and they have groups of 4 players, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got 24 players that you can accommodate in that setting, correct? And it's basically technical work, right? It's basically what can you do? You can't do anything that's opposed, right? So it's technical work and a lot of agility, a lot of coordination, a lot of change of direction, which you would expect, returning to play. You don't want to push the players to the point of injury. That's just silly.
Right. No, you're right. So very good. Well, Manoj, thank you so much. It's been really good. So and there'll be a recording of it. And so we can share that out. But for those that attended, we're actually today on TGIF, I think we're going to talk a little bit about return to play, right? Ideas. So for those that want to tune in later, great. If not, we'll just have our typical TGIF session too. So, but thank you so much, Manoj, and boss. Thank you very much for supporting, and thank you for your time. So
yeah, good
thanks,
to see
Manoj. Happy Memorial.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day.
All right.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Good job.